Greetings and welcome to
YAS Podcast, formerly known as
YAS Stripper Podcast.
This is our podcast, all of ours.
A podcast for all sex workers.
In this podcast, we will discuss the ins and outs, ups and downs of our lives and experiences as sex workers. I am your host, Daisy Ducati.
I am your heauxprahs, Gigi Holiday.
I'm your stripper queen from the north, Onyx.
I'm AM Davies, and this is YAS Podcast. Hi everyone, AMD here as your host with another new and exciting podcast episode. Today's guest with us is all the way from across the pond. We have Edie, Montana with us today. Say hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're in Berlin today, right?
Yes, I'm in Berlin.
Nice. Is it like freezing ass cold out there?
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's dark.
It's dark?
Yeah.
Okay, because you have the sun situation over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much 4 months.
4 months but like it comes out sometimes though.
Yeah, like once a month or so.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Moving on. I'm sorry. So Edie, before we get started, we just need to kind of go over some things about yourself. What are your pronouns?
She, her.
Lovely. Thank you. And we must know, because this is a sex worker podcast, it's about sex workers. Do you identify as a sex worker?
Yes, I do identify as a sex worker.
Perfect. Thank you for answering those crucial questions. And we would love to get to know you a little bit. You have a story to tell. That's why we're here today, and we're going to go through your story. But before we get to like the specific story that we're going to cover today, we just want to know a little bit about you. What are you up to? What's your introduction to sex work? What is Slut Riot? What is that about? Like, just can you fill in those blanks for us?
Yeah, sure. I started stripping in, oh my God, when was that? 2018. For different reasons, actually. Of course, one of them was money. I had a day job and it was really depressing. I was a tour guide. But I don't know, I was like talking about Nazis every day in these bunkers, it's Germany. So yeah, I just wanted to find another source of income. And then there was also the aspect of, I just felt so frustrated about just men sexualizing me without my consent. And I wanted to start to like capitalize on that and to have like a place where I could consent to my own sexualization. And then, I started, and soon after that, I discovered how problematic our industry is, how bad our working conditions are, and I felt like I couldn't just sit and do nothing about it. So I created a Slut Riot. At the time, we were still called Berlin Strippers Collective. We recently changed our name this year in October. And so with Slut Riot, we are an organization of sex workers who organizes events. The events are sex worker led. All the performers are sex workers. The money goes to sex workers. And we have three main goals, I would say. One is to create community, of course. Another one is to use arts and performance to destigmatize our industry and sex work in general. And then there is also a component of fun in what we do. So we want to create a source of income for sex worker that gives us joy and a way to do activism that is not just depressing us, but that actually is fun for us.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us when you started Slut Riot, formerly known as Berlin Strippers Collective. When was that happening?
We started in 2019, and we are the first ones in Germany.
That's amazing. So very soon after you started dancing, you started this. That's great. And had you had experiences organizing or doing things like that before?
I had no idea what I was doing.
I love that.
I mean, isn't that what strippers do?
Yes. Yes, that is like literally my mantra for life. I'm going to do this thing that I have no idea what I'm doing. So I love that initiative, and that takes a lot of courage. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I
And thank
have
you
to
for your
say
work.
that like one of the other co-founders, she did have experience in events
Okay.
um, because she was coming from London, and in London they had the East London Strippers Collective. So we kind of took inspiration from them. Shout out to them.
Nice.
And yeah, so she was kind of like guiding a little bit, but yeah, mostly we had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah, I love it. But you feel like you do now?
Oh yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
still like some things like I don't know
Totally.
with with taxes and stuff. I'm still like discovering a lot of things.
Yeah, I know adults well into their like age who are still discovering new things about taxes. So it's chill. Yeah, you're doing great. Thank you so much for that work too. It's really important that it's happening globally, because the issues that sex workers deal with and strippers it's like a global issue. It's exploitation happening all over the place.
Yeah. And that's also why, we want to encourage strippers and sex workers from other places to start what we are doing. And yeah.
Yes, I love that. So today you are going to tell us a very specific story about something that happened between you and another person. And I would just like to tell the audience that um, the other person slash people in the story won't have names or real names. They'll be anonymous, and we're doing that for many reasons that we don't really need to get into, because this is just how it is. Right? Do we agree on that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, before you tell the story, can you just give us a little synopsis on who the other character in the story is, who we've named Gregor for the purposes of telling this story? Can you just give us like a little bit of context of who this person is in the world in general without giving away their identity?
So Gregor is a film director who got in contact with Slut Riot at the time, Berlin Strippers Collective, to make a documentary about us. And then he decided to focus on me as a main character. And
Mhm.
we collaborated for 2 years for a film.
Nice.
And Gregor, the film director, is a white cis male.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you. So we're going to let you take it away and share your story. You're up.
Okay. So I want to call this based on a true story. How a film director twisted my biography as a stripper for his true crime project. Chapter 1: Grooming. It was the pandemic when my colleagues from the Berlin Strippers Collective and I got contacted by an independent filmmaker. For anonymity purposes, I'm going to call him Gregor, like Gregor Samsa from Kafka's Metamorphosis. He discovered our stripper performance collective through the online shows we were setting up to compensate for the lack of job opportunities. We were stripper activists, sexy but also political, a delicious dish ready for the consumption of contemporary media. Gregor was interested in portraying our love life as sex workers in a documentary. And I wish I could say we were skeptical about yet another rich white man who wanted to profit off sex worker stories. More than skeptical, we were bored, out of work, and very new to the business. Gregor introduced himself as someone who had never been to a strip club, but who had, quote, enjoyed quite a few nights in Berlin's kinky techno clubs, and who valued personal freedom and human dignity as well as truthfulness. End of quote. His latest film had been nominated for an award at the Berlinale Film Festival the previous year. My colleagues and I started talking about the kind of dresses we would pick for the red carpet. We signed contracts, ensuring that we had the right to approve or deny the final cut, even though we didn't think of hiring our own lawyer to go over those contracts. Gregor shot some interviews about our job and our personal lives, and snippets of our shows. With time, my colleagues became less invested in the project, and Gregor decided to focus on me as the main character of the documentary. He found my life story interesting, the girl who grew up in the conservative Italian countryside and who moved to Berlin, became a stripper, and founded a stripper collective. My inner child was lulled by his praise. My conservative background implied I never found approval for my life choices as a stripper, becoming my family's shame. I live a double life for several years, a slutty version of Hannah Montana, average schoolgirl by day, and wannabe rock star by night. I thought I could have the best of both worlds until my parents found out. My body has kept the score of that shame, and the stress triggered by the fear of questions around my job, by judgment, by verbal aggressions, gifted me an anxiety disorder. And happy birthday. Gregor offered me a new narrative. Not only was someone telling me I was doing all right with my life choices, but that it was also worth a documentary. When I signed the contract, I was struggling to find the online signature feature on my new laptop, and I joked about the stripper being technology stupid. He answered, "The stripper is organizing a lot of projects and caring for a lot of people at the same time. That's only my impression. You can be proud of yourself." And I said, "Well, you always take my sarcasm too seriously." What actually made me more attractive than my colleagues as a main character was the fact that I was oversharing. He started suggesting activities for team building, and I never missed an opportunity. He would take me out for food, and we would go to techno parties together. Sometimes alcohol was flowing, and my words were flowing too. I began to share stories that were not work-related. We were together for one of these team building activities one afternoon when I received the terrible news that one of my childhood friends had almost died in a fire accident. I went down memory lane and opened up about the night I was partying with her in the mountains, and a common friend took advantage of me being very drunk and raped me in the fields. He listened carefully, so carefully you would really believe Gregor the friend had replaced Gregor the film director. Every time I woke up after a work shift, I would text him to explain my night in detail. Like that one time I gave a dance to a music producer who was friends with Robert Plant. He had rejected all of the other girls, but he picked me because his absolute pitch felt an instant connection to my voice. I laughed about it with Gregor. I was sick, and that night my voice was not my normal voice at all. One day, Gregor sent over some audio recordings of the interviews, and as soon as I opened the file, I muted my laptop. I wasn't used to hearing my own voice being played back. Cringe. Don't send it again without a trigger warning. He reacted, "You got a compliment for your voice from a musician with absolute pitch. He should know, I guess. I want to repeat the compliment at this point." The flattery hung in the air and I frowned, confused and a little uncomfortable. I was on a long night bus ride on my way to the Tatra Mountains in South Poland when he asked me where my name comes from. The bus was muffled in darkness and my screen was flashing a blinding light. I took the name after Edie Sedgwick. I have never heard of her. She was one of Andy Warhol's stars. You should watch Factory Girl. He got back to me after watching the film, moved by the story of Edie being exploited by the show business. He said, "My job right now is to make the story as authentic, convincing, and detailed as possible, while respecting your boundaries because of possible consequences in your private and professional life." A thought that came up while watching Factory Girl was that creative collaborations could also be quite exploitative when telling someone else's story. I would like to acknowledge that by making you co-writer of our film. I read the message 3 times. After the 3rd time, the meaning was still the same. I was beyond excited. Being a stripper in a society that is undeniably ageist has an expiration date, and Gregor was giving me optimistic prospects for my future. Chapter 2. Blinded by the Canary Island Sun. Gregor asked me to describe the sex with my ex-partner, and I hesitated, not feeling comfortable with that. The film is about strippers, sex work, sex, and body positivity. We will have to talk about sex. His reaction slapped me as dominant as a white man's hand can be. I am just looking for artistic freedom for the writing instead of discussing limits in the first place. I sat with my discomfort. Was I being too conservative? Were my boundaries too strict? Sharing personal details about my sex life on a public screen for an indefinite number of strangers was not something I had the right to feel distressed about. After our first disagreement, Gregor invited me to fly over to the Canary Islands, where he was on holiday with his girlfriend, to finalize the documentary script. A paid trip to the islands of sunshine, a break from the miserable, never-ending Berlin winter. The moment he asked me, I had a foot on the airplane. The flat he rented had a terrace facing the ocean, and the volcanic nature of the island made it look like a post-apocalyptic dream. Sitting on the terrace, Gregor was reading out to me the new parts he added to the script. A rape scene in the mountains. A friend at the hospital after a fire accident. Is everything okay? I couldn't stop my eye from twitching. We had never discussed including the stories I told him confidentially off camera. There was my trauma printed black on white, a surprise guest that joined our retreat unannounced. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, remembering he had already gotten angry at me complaining about the sex scenes. Yes, everything is okay. Go on. Tension accumulated. I was reviewing some strip club scenes, worried about the kind of representation we were giving of the sex industry. As soon as I expressed the wish of keeping in mind the possible repercussions the film would have on the sex worker community, he got angry again. Angry because I care too much about what other people thought of me, and we shouldn't care about the opinion of an abstract sex worker community. There were always going to be people criticizing. The monster of artistic freedom was hungry and demanded to be fed with every detail, every story, and the private sphere shall not be drained of its nutrients, lest the monster be left to starve. Edie, you need to listen and learn. Stop educating. There stood a man, dismissing a woman's expertise in the matter. He added that he too knew about discrimination since he grew up as an artist in South Germany instead of pursuing the business career his parents wished for him. Chapter 3. A gangster story is more interesting than a true story. Gregor was aiming big when he got in contact with people working for Netflix. The verdict was, smash the patriarchy is not enough to convince a wider audience. For that reason, he had decided to turn the documentary into a more fictionalized project and to make it a series. He sent over a new version of the script he had worked without me. I was at home alone, and I read the 40 pages at once, my stomach pulling up acid reflux. Edie had become Ada. My rape story was transferred onto Ada, completely out of context, presented as a flashback from the past that had nothing to do with the rest of the storyline. A portion of free violence to add on top like sprinkles to your ice cream. Then Ada got assaulted in the strip club, where a member of a big criminal organization grabbed her throat to pin her against the wall as a reaction of her slapping him. This scene was taken from something I experienced years ago, where I did slap a customer because he was disrespectful during a private dance. He was probably a local drug dealer, and he shook his fist at me, but he never actually touched me. Yet, the new script didn't want to leave the sex worker who enforced her boundaries unpunished. Finally, the last touch, the crushed nuts to add to the sprinkles, was a whole chapter about the abusive club manager who had become the bad guy after getting traumatized by the war. I poured a jar of anger onto the keyboard and emailed Gregor asking how he came up with that cheap soap opera. The storyline was written upon your request of anonymizing the characters so that we wouldn't reveal the real identity of people from your workplace. Well, what does this violence have to do with anonymizing the characters? He answered, you were informed a long time ago that characters would be fictionalized to protect the identity of the individuals in an already marginalized community who don't want to appear in public, and that we need to dig deeper into the material, be truthful as storytellers instead of instrumentalizing the narrative for a third party's interest. I stared blankly at the conversation on the screen. I pictured him sitting at his desk, fantasizing about me getting assaulted at my workplace, and my fingers kept shouting furiously at the keyboard. I was not okay with giving space and empathy to an exploitative manager's voice. I was not okay with violence against women and sex workers being used as a marketing tool. I was not okay with my personal information being twisted to produce another stereotype, bad quality movie misrepresenting our industry. I was not okay with calling that true story. To my criticism, he responded he had hired professional storytellers to proofread the script. If the professionals approved of it as a good story, the sex worker with years of experience in the industry should not dare to speak. During our 2-year collaboration, he had gotten the juicy insights he was missing to convince people of the presumed truthfulness of his work, and my name, taken after Edie Sedgwick, became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Without explaining what is going to happen to my personal material, he sent me a final email. Our project has developed into a further production that goes into a true crime direction. There is no market for the activism and romance parts anymore. Your contract as co-author is fulfilled. I haven't heard from him since. He hasn't answered my emails where I withdraw consent for my personal stories to be used for his true crime project, nor has he answered my lawyers. One day I woke up and instead of finding Gregor, I found a cockroach. Communication between us was forever excluded. The end.
Thank you so much for reading that. I have read that at least like 3 times. I've read your story in preparation for this moment. And you reading it just gives it so much more context. Like hearing it come out of your voice, from you directly, is more powerful than simply reading it on a screen. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, because I know this has been a difficult journey. So really appreciate you sharing. You're such a beautiful writer as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you want to share with our audience, before I ask you some follow-up questions, why you're sharing this story?
Yes, I think it was really important for me to share this because I'm sure that I'm not the only one out there who experienced something like this. And I want other sex workers to hear that as a cautionary tale, because I think it's also pretty common for us to, get this attention from the media. And then, of course, you get excited. You think about future prospects and I don't know, red carpet, whatever. You think about money, and it's easy to be manipulated when you're blinded by these expectations.
Right. And Gregor himself, his real name, does that hold some weight? Did he have some sort of accolades that when you were able to look him up and be like, this feels like a real thing? Did that happen at all?
Yes, I mean, he's not famous, and
Okay.
that's also why I didn't want to share his name. I don't really care about defamation laws, because fuck him, to be honest. But I think that sharing his name would give him more publicity than what he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he had a nomination at the Berlinale Film Festival, which is
Right.
one of the most important film festivals in Europe. And
Okay.
and I watched this film and it was actually good.
Okay. Yeah, and so that even like that kind of adds to it, right? Because I've experienced in my lifetime lots of people, and when I lived in Hollywood for like 20 years, so there's lots of people that are working on projects, and that's when someone comes to you and they have nominations or already produced work, it can feel even more exciting, and it can feel more real, and so um yeah, it has happened to other people, and trying to protect ourselves from people who want to tell our stories can be challenging, especially if you're new to because when did this all happen? What year was this? This was over the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, oh God, I think we were 1 year into the pandemic.
So it was 2020, right? You'd only
Yeah.
been stripping for like 2 years, maybe, you know? So, I mean, you're still a baby stripper at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah. And I can totally see how it would be easy to get into a situation like this. 100%. We love doing this work, maintaining a platform for sex workers to tell their stories, entertaining and educating the public. If you love our podcast, please consider donating. We are now a 501c3, so your donations would be considered tax deductible. Go to yaswork.org/donate and easily send us some support to help keep this podcast going. That's yaswork.org/donate. As a way to support our work at YAS Podcast, we created a store, the YAS Store. All of the art in the store is made by sex workers, and all of the profits get shared with sex worker artists. Go to yasstore.shop to get your gear. It's stuff for sex workers, pole dancers, and sex worker allies. 10% of profits are shared with sex worker organizations. It's a great way to support our podcast and sex workers everywhere. That's yasstore.shop. I'd like to ask you some questions to follow up on the story that you just shared. Is that okay?
Yes,
We
of
move to
course.
that? Okay. So, do you think that Gregor was being predatory from the very beginning? Or, like, do you think that this just morphed over time for him because his like opportunities changed? Or do you think like he came into it from the beginning being like, I'm just going to use sex workers for what I think would be a compelling project? What do you think?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
I don't think that he came in with the intention of stealing details from my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like his interest in our community was genuine,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that the problem is that he saw us as sex workers more from the sex positive side
Okay.
without caring about the whole like workers politics behind it.
Sure.
And I think that this is shown by what like the way he reacted when I asked him to be mindful of the kind of representation we were giving. And then immediately he freaked out and said that I shouldn't care about what an abstract community thinks. You know, if you say something like that, it means that you've understood nothing
Absolutely.
of the sex worker community. But I
Right.
think that so there were maybe some seeds at the beginning, but I think that he really changed after he spoke with people from Netflix and he saw his big opportunity.
Okay. And so big opportunity, was this like his first time? Like he wanted to be in with Netflix. He finally has Netflix attention, and Netflix is telling him in order for us to accept it, it has to be more of this. And so he basically, it sounds like he chose his big opportunity over whether or not he was exploiting you and your colleagues and your community.
Yes, definitely. Even though, you know, like when I think about it, this whole grooming period, I mean, I didn't see it coming. It was my
Okay.
best friend who later told me, like, she was like, yeah, I kind of saw it coming, but I didn't want to tell you anything because you were so excited about it. I didn't want to ruin it for you. But, you know, he was definitely flirty with me and
Okay.
he was making me want to like open, like he saw that I was an oversharer and he just took his chance. I think that this was on purpose since the beginning. Also because interestingly enough, he had made another film about some Nazis in South Germany.
Okay.
And I asked him, how did you get this Nazi to open up?
Okay.
Like, you're left wing. How could he trust you? And he answered, oh, well, he was just such a show off. He just loved attention. He just loved sharing. So, I'm like, if you've done it with your previous film, you might have done it as well. Like, I mean, I cannot know for sure, but it gives me food for thought.
Right. Like maybe he read what like feeds you. He read like what would make Edie feel good. What are the types of things could I say to extract information from her? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also interesting that you use the word grooming, because that is kind of what predators do. Not to say, okay, that Gregor is like actively like, I'm gonna prey on these people, but like it's like that behavior, right? He's got this behavior where it's like, I need what I want what I want, and I'm gonna do what I can to get it, and it doesn't matter to me who I harm in the process.
Yes, exactly.
Right, which is still extremely problematic, but not necessarily him going like, well, I'm just going to target this person and kind of like, make their lives more difficult and more horrible for my own gain. Like, I don't think that's in his brain. Would you agree that he's probably not thinking that way?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that he's blinded by like his artistic freedom and, a bigger purpose with arts. And that's a very privileged perspective. Like, it's easy for you to talk in this way if you are
Yeah.
a white cis man who's never experienced discrimination.
Not
Of
according to
course,
him. He's been discriminated against. I do want to unpack that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. So yeah, I do agree that he's not like a predator like on purpose.
Right.
But he just doesn't understand anything of politics, even though he presents himself as a very feminist man, whatever they all are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the part about how he experienced discrimination because he didn't do what his parents wanted to do. So who was he being discriminated? His parents were discriminating? Who? Where? What?
Please.
That
So
one got yeah. Go ahead.
I think that he has no clue, and therefore he conflates discrimination with disappointment.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is true that the south of Germany is conservative and they want you to follow this life path of like, having a career in the corporate business, in the corporate world, and getting married and having a family. But we can't talk about discrimination if you don't follow that path for you. You're going to disappoint people. People are going to talk shit about you. But discrimination is something different. It's something on a systemic level.
Yeah.
And that targets people based on their minority aspect, whether it's race, gender, whatever. So he has no clue.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And so I have one question. First, I'm curious about the project in general. Is it streaming now? And we don't need to name the project. I'm just wondering, is it streaming? Is it popular? Are people watching it? Like what?
So here's the thing. I don't know. I am
Okay.
still on his website,
Okay.
and the series is announced for 2025, but there is absolutely no information out there, and even my lawyer tried to contact him and he's just not answering. So right now what my lawyer said is that I just have to sit and wait, and if the series comes out, then I can sue him.
Yeah, and that sounds great.
I'm gonna do that.
And not just him, right? Because also let's say the series comes out and let's say it's on Netflix, then like what, and you don't have to answer this, but I'm just really curious, like what does that mean for Netflix and for the other producers of this project that are associating themselves with someone who stole a story and then twisted it? and I'm not an expert, so I would love to know what that looks like. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit frustrated about that because I don't think that Netflix producers really care,
No.
especially if they're willing to produce a series that perpetuates stereotypes and that has gangsters in the strip club. I don't think they're the kind of producers who care about their reputation.
Yeah. I mean, I stripped for 18 and a half years in the clubs. I can't even tell you how few gangsters I actually ran into.
I know.
I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because of course it does, because gangsters also go out and do things. But it's not like, if you're not a sex worker and you've not been to a strip club and you're learning about sex work and stripping from listening to this podcast, that is just not a really common theme, that gangsters are coming into the strip clubs and roughing us up. Has it happened? Sure. Does it happen all the time? No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. To close up some things, what are some things that you would do differently moving forward? Let's say someone comes to you again in the future, / also you can couple this with looking back. What would you have done differently with Gregor and with the current situation?
So, first of all, I would get my own lawyer.
Okay.
Of course, it's an expense, but it's worth it at the end of the day. And then a second thing I would do is I would separate my professional life from my personal life and avoid all these hangouts with drinks and clubs and chats. And because that was what made me see him as a friend and what made me trust him as a person. Whereas if I had kept some professional boundaries, that wouldn't have happened probably, and I would have only shared the material that I thought was fitting for the movie.
Okay. Yeah. And what advice would you give to other people, or is it pretty much the same advice, or is there anything that you would,
Yeah, I think the same advice, plus join a union or join some support group who can help you in case something goes wrong. I'm really lucky because I'm part of a union for freelancers and creatives here in Berlin, and they could pay for my lawyer. Like, they can pay for my lawyer right now. So in case I have to start a lawsuit, they're going to pay for it.
Okay. That's good. Okay. Wow. Edie, how would you like people to follow you and know about, like, if they want to get in touch with you, if they'd like to share their story with you, or if they want to know more about Slut Riot, like, how can our audience members find you?
Yeah, so you can contact me. I have a website, is edie.montana.com. There is a contact form there, or you can message me on Instagram if you find me, because I'm shadow banned. That's edie.montana. And if you are curious about Slut Riot, you can also check our website, or our Instagram is slut, written with a V, dot riot. No, sorry, without the dot. Slut with a V, riot, all together.
Slut with a riot all together. So instead of the U, it's a V, because we have to hide words on
course.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
anyway.
If someone has similar stories they would like to share, please send them over. I'd like to hear them. You're not alone. And, maybe if we gather enough stories, we can make a book about it.
Yeah. And actually, thank you for saying that, because we'll close with this. The point of YAS, a Stripper podcast, or YAS podcast, is that we do tell the stories of sex workers' lives and what's happening in today's world. And we document that, and we have that on our website and on listening platforms. And so if there's anyone out there that has a story that you want to share and get out to the world, and you've been having a hard time getting out to the world, and you're a sex worker, you can come to us and just find us on Instagram, or email us at yasastripperpodcast@gmail.com, and we will respond to you and follow up. Edie, thank you so much again for sharing so vulnerably and powerfully your story.
No, thank you for having me. It was, yeah, I'm really thankful. It meant a lot.
Perfect. And thank you to everyone out there listening and watching. And we hope you join us next time. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
YAS Podcast is produced by YAS Work, which is a nonprofit dedicated to educating and entertaining audiences about sex work through media. Learn more about how you can get involved in the podcast and our organization by visiting yaswork.org. That's YASWORK.org.